Hello everybody, Matthew again. Um, so I'm doing this the object stares back on the nature of seeing bodies, chapter 4. You can tell I highlighted, did some underlining, took some notes. But it says here, first chapter of chapter 4, which is 125. Our eyes are built to seek out complete figures. If I am shown a triangle missing the midsection of its sides, I will complete it in my mind. And it later goes on and kind of says that if a building is half hidden by the branches of a tree, we literally see it in fragments. You subtract the tree and you'd have the floating collection. And basically what it says is psychoneurologists call the phenomenon subjective contour completion. And it helps explain how we can routinely see a single building instead of disjunct pieces. On a deeper level, subjective contour completion answers to a desire for wholeness over dissection and form over shapelessness. I've always thought that was the Gestalt or Gestalt, I guess depends on where you're from, how you pronounce that, the theory. Which is actually broken down into principles. Those are, yes, theories to visual perception, similarity, continuation, closure, and proximity, and figure ground. Right. So, the examples that they pretty much end up kind of giving here, like the way that it described that subjective contour completion, really reminded me a lot of the closure and a little bit of proximity principles. That and later on it goes on to say on the next page of 126 how the constellations are this chaos and this void, and it's a shapeless thing, and our minds just don't know how to deal with it. So we connect the dots, make constellations, and try to see things that aren't there. Basically, create a body. Yeah. So you can see here without the overlay of the swan, which is Cygnus, the name of that. You can see where they've connected the also known as the Northern Cross, or the backbone of the Milky Way, if you will. These are all examples of how they've made something out of that to kind of help structuralize and organize something that we can't really, I guess, wrap our minds around. Which I'll come back to that later on when we talk about how we've projecting that body image onto something as a description that doesn't necessarily have that form. It also talks about how Edvard Munch, would draw round and round their figures, basically kind of creating this kind of cocoon in a way. And essentially, he's talking about how that is a form of our dissatisfaction in the body, and wanting to go back to what he calls the egg, like a pre-human egg. He says a zoocyte, but if you Google that, that's not really a word. But if you just take the Z off, and it's, I guess, an oocyte or oocyte, I'm not even sure that's what comes up on Google of how that. Kind of got to wade through a little bit to kind of get what he's talking about on that, but essentially, yeah, it's the oneness, what we were originally before we grew into what we were. So it's almost like this primordial type projection. Throwing it back when when I was talking about the swan, Cygnus, and how it was also called the backbone of the Milky Way. 129 is what I was alluding to, how we want to see, like these complete bodies. Um, and we try to see something like ourselves, a reflection or another, a doppelganger or a twin, or even just part of us, etc., etc., etc. In other words, we try to understand strange forms by thinking back to the bodies. And it talks about, like a house, the windows are the eyes, the doors the mouth, and it goes on, and how we call these different, like an arm of a chair, the legs of a table. We I'm going back to this word, project bodily forms and human forms onto inanimate objects, even because we don't, if we don't have a name for it. I mean, the stick thingies that hold the table up, the round thing or the square thing or whatever. So it's a leg. So it looks kind of like ours. We'll just call it a leg. So kind of get that point. This is also where it talks a little bit more about, which is one of the things I could agree with them on. And you see I highlighted it here, and I'll read it for you. But essentially, if it's my instincts that are impelling me to look for suitable human bodies, then it's the ordinary squalid business of evolution. But if I keep going on until I find any body at all and then stop there, I'm forfeiting the chance to see the world in some other way. And that's probably, I think, the greatest little definition that, or explanation that he's put in here. That, if you try to make that body and when it's not there, and you just continually do it until you find this ideal form for you to look at. In this particular case, it was finding the seahorse and making a human body out of it by sight, and he's missing out on the beauty that is that seahorse. And I think we do that a lot. I think Kirby and I were having a discussion on the sea forms of the watercolor painting. It was very abstract, and I think I'd mentioned the Gestalt and whatnot, and it kind of seems like we let that we let ourselves get carried away with it, and find things that maybe we're just detracting from the beauty of the form itself. It is what it is. Let yourself enjoy that. If it's a smooth looking surface and it's sensual in some way, enjoy it for what that is. Not necessarily have to categorize it or organize it into something, but I think it's our nature, which is basically what we've been talking about all the way up to this point. And and even even if the search for the body fails entirely, if what we are seeing is positively not body-like in any sensible way, even then we remain in thrall of the idea of a body. So, he also talks about the desire that we have, a very primal desire. We want it tangible. I think he's basically alluding to like procreation and sex, and a body feels good to us, and it drives us instinctually to do so. And that's kind of the gist of what he's basically said for this entire first half, is that we crave that, we want that, we need to make that for our own subconscious pleasure. But and then he goes on. Not only are we seeking a body and a complete body, whether it's primordial, whether it's through desire, whether it's not, but we need it in motion as well, not something that's stagnant and static, because our bodies are constantly in motion. And his quote on page 134 is, "The body is a thing that is in perpetual motion until the moment of its death." And so we constantly try to make sense of some of the things that we do, especially in art, and looking at it, and that's why that rhythm and motion and sight lines and things like that really play up for us and make the most sense. So pretty much summing this up, essentially what he's trying to do is lay this groundwork with everything that we've talked about very long here. But talking about how the microscope and seeing amoebas and these protozoa and all these things that change the way that we have to accept a body. And in the earlier times, you know, they would see one of these that looked maybe like it was in the shape of a turtle, so it would be drawn that way, as if it were going through a turtle stage of its life. And you know, they pretty much would run out of analogies and metaphors and all these things that they could use, and kind of had to accept that this is a new form of body that we can't really call, you know, these appendages arms and things like that. And really to finish it out, I think the grand finale here is on page 158. You know, there's a lesson in this for responding to people who are ill. As a sick person succumbs to her illness, she recedes from us and becomes more a part of the apparatus of life support. The body, in effect, becomes an analogic machine, essentially coming to terms with the fact that the need for life support, that machinery becomes part of your body because it is functioning for you. And so that in itself is an entirely different animal from what we're used to. And pretty much everything that we have to accept at that point is moving on, whether this is going to be, you know, later on where we have, you know, biomechanical arms or whatever the case may be. We're always having to redefine that. And no matter how much our basic instinct is telling us to make it an arm or make it a leg or make it a face or see this in something that it's not there, at some point we're going to have to redefine how we see the body.